This is going to be a very, very informative discussion on unlocking infrastructure development for livability. I repeat the topic for you all once again. This is about unlocking infrastructure development for livability. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is going to be chaired by Indrajit Kembhavi, Managing Partner, Kembhavi Architecture.Foundation. After working with the renowned architect Gerard da Cunha, he joined the Kembhavi Architecture.Foundation founded by his parents. His passion is to create contextually relevant green architecture. He believes in a holistic ideology of approaching every project exclusively by crafting components of function, climate, culture, economics, and technology to arrive at an optimal and stimulating experience of space and form. May I please request Indrajit ji to please kindly join us over here on stage. We would love to know more information on them after that. Please give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I will now be quickly announcing our speakers in alphabetical order. We have with us today Dr. Hariharan, Chandrashekar, Ecological Economist, Trustee, Alttech.Foundation Chairman, IGBC Bengaluru. Dr. Hariharan is an Indian ecological economist founding and presiding over urban people-led movements for urban sustainability on water and energy, a mentor for green enterprise and entrepreneurs, and an enabler of industry directions on sustainability and resilience at the building scale and the city scale. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, sustainability is the future. He's doing some great work in that aspect. Please give it up for him. Zor se talia, everybody over here. Thank you so much, sir, for coming and joining us over here. We also have with us today Mohan, Managing Director, Mars Architects, an international and national award-winning architect. Mahendra ji has been recognized for his exceptional ability to deliver context-sensitive architecture that seamlessly blends functionality, aesthetic excellence, and environmental responsibility. With over a decade of extensive experience, Mahendra ji has spearheaded the design and execution of a wide range of projects, from industrial parks and IT campuses to residential developments and cultural spaces, both India as well as all over the globe. Please give it up for Mahendra ji, ladies and gentlemen. You're a national award-winning architect. Do you always feel the national award inside you? You do, right? Thank you. Huh? Thank you. We also have with us Prem, Chandavarkar, Managing Partner, C&T Architects. Premji is a former executive director of Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bengaluru and is an academic advisor and guest faculty at Indian and International Colleges of Architecture. Besides his design practice at C&T, he writes, lectures and blogs on architecture, urbanism, philosophy, politics, education, environment, art, spirituality, and almost everything on this planet Earth. Please give it up for Premji, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, sir, for coming and joining us over here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And we also have with us Dr. Ms. Ponni M. Concessao, Principal Architect, Founder, Ponni, Oscar and Rahul Architects, Chennai as well. Congratulations to you. You won some nice awards as well yesterday. So please give it up for her, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know, she's the first woman architect in Asia, in India. She's worked on the Prime Minister's Housing for All project and the prestigious Gagan, and dedicated 30 years of her life here in India towards building prestigious government and private projects, pan-India and abroad. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And on that note, sir, please request you to take it forward. We have the timers in place over there, and we are all ready. Thank you. It's working. Can we do a quick check on the mic, please? Yes, this one is working. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I think our panel is a very, very relevant one, and it's a very interesting panel and something that's going to traumatize in a long time if we don't act upon the subject. That is unlocking infrastructure for livability. So for us today, infrastructure has been about gridlocks, and which we really need to unlock. I'm just coming back from Electronic City, and you know the predictions of how fast you can reach a place or how timely you can reach a place are going awry every time. You either reach too early because you leave too early, or you reach too late. The man-hours that we are losing in just moving between spaces is immense. It's not only damaging to the workforce, because we are spending a lot of time on the road, which we need not do. At the same time, we are also seeing that it's a terrible mess on a whole psyche because, sitting in the vehicle, getting stuck for a long period of time is extremely traumatizing. So when we are seeing all these things happening, and we are seeing a lot of information coming in the press about tunnels. We are seeing a lot of information coming about skydecks. We are seeing a lot of things happening, a lot of piecemeal attempts being made to solve the problem. So the reality that I perceive is that we are not looking at it holistically as a solution. Are we basically wrong in our master planning? Are we following a master planning that is extremely outdated, something that was designed where the vehicles were extremely low and pedestrian movement was much higher? It's essentially the British era master plans which has evolved at a very slow pace and have morphed over a time. And there are no radical thoughts that have come in which are, catering to the urban migration that's happening. There are no radical thoughts happening of de-urbanizing cities where, you can grow 2-tier cities, 3-tier cities into thriving hubs. So there is a lot of imbalances that we see in the whole ecosystem. We are seeing a lot of cities have developed out of the dust. For example, now the cities which we may not like it visually, we may not like it, or we may like it, some like it, some don't. Cities like Dubai, some cities like Singapore, which have really evolved over a period of time in a very, very deep, sustainable models and are thriving. But where are we going as a country and what's happening to our own city, Bangalore? Now, I think we have architects sitting here from Bangalore and from Chennai. Chennai still probably, due to the age-old infrastructure that it has, is still more livable as of today. And Bangalore, which was the most livable city in India because of its green habitation, the climate, has become one of the most uninhabitable cities in the country today. So the first question I would like to ask is to Mr. Prem, because he's been probably practicing for the longest period of time compared to all of us. And he has seen the city grow from, I think, smaller projects, individual houses, to a extremely fast track growth. I won't call it development, I'll only call it growth. And this manifestation from a sleepy town to a city that is growing at super speed, where the infrastructure is absolutely not keeping pace. How do you think it's affecting us, and what do you think could be a radical solution for this?
I think there's an underlying problem we need to look at, which if you don't get that right, any effort at managing infrastructure, planning cities is going to get derailed. And that's the way land markets function in India. Land markets are highly inefficient, that they're riddled with ambiguity, bureaucracy, opacity, corruption. And any of us who've done any class in elementary economics, you would have learned that prices settle where the supply and demand curves intersect. And in inefficient markets, the supply curve gets closer to the vertical, so minor increases in demand cause disproportionate increases in price. So we have the situation today where land values bear little relationship to average incomes. We tend to treat that as an inconvenience that has to be tolerated, but it has much more profound consequences. Because the urban land use plan is a fundamental means of planning cities, and to be recognized as an inhabitant in a city, I have to locate myself on the land use plan through some form of agreement, whether formal or informal, of sale, rental, employment, whatever it is, on a parcel that corresponds with the land use plan. And there's a price threshold for doing that. And what has happened because of the nature of land markets is half the city is outpriced by this. So they cannot locate themselves within the master plan. They have to go into slums, unregulated layouts, unregulated construction, and other forms of informality. And this affects more than the poor, it affects the middle class also. So you have 50%, close to 50% of the population in large Indian cities who are by the system itself rendered invisible, rendered excluded. And this has three profound consequences. One is that large population which is invisible, is vulnerable, condemned to a degraded life, and potentially angry. We have to be thankful that they haven't got as angry as they could get. But there is a subset of them that has got angry and has begun to believe that vigilante violence is the way to assert their presence. And that is getting exacerbated by a politics that is willing to exploit that provocation. Second, it creates spatial discontinuities which come in the way of any efficient infrastructure network. For efficiency of infrastructure, we need spatial continuity. And third, because there's such a large extent of informality, that limits the reach of any planning. And that not only undermines planning, but it opens up space for informality at the upper end of the spectrum, where the elite can manipulate the system for their own rent-seeking purposes. So when you get informality at both ends of the spectrum, the city loses the capacity to plan and manage itself. So there's a lot to be done on infrastructure, but I think if we don't solve this underlying problem of land markets, all that effort is going to come to naught.
But what do you think? The migration, the urban migration that's coming in is a reality. And corruption is a reality. Greed has become a reality. And the capitalism on the planet has become a reality. What we are noticing that, especially me, I have come from a two-tier city, and I have been seeing that, like a lot of politicians invest into a tier 1 city, whichever state they belong to. And, the drive of development is only happening into the mega cities. Yes, like probably Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu are still the better off cities where you have decent size of secondary markets, like Maharashtra is Pune, Aurangabad, Kolhapur, Sholapur, which are developed pretty well and have the infrastructure of a tier 1 city. Whereas if you look at Karnataka, there is a huge lopsidedness that has come to it, where you don't see any growth happening in the two-tier cities, and it's leading to immense migration. What we have been noticing is that except traditional business families, all the intellectual capital from all these tier 2 towns is getting sucked into Bangalore or Pune or Hyderabad, the nearest micro markets, whichever are close to these micro markets. And that is creating a load on the system. And on the other side, we are seeing the government is trying to have Bangalore, greater Bangalore, greater Bangalore. They're just consuming fertile land, agricultural land, and adding it to the city without a holistic thought on what could be done. Can't we look at redevelopment? Can't we look at increasing the verticality of cities? Since it's real, we cannot hide from it. And green the cities, look at redevelopment not only of individual buildings, but areas at a whole, where you create a lot of walkability, you create a lot of internal landscape, garden spaces, and see a lot of change that is happening. So you have been a real estate developer also. You have been associated with a sustainable movement. You know the economics challenges that are coming up with these things. What do you think is the way forward? How do we solve this situation?
Thanks, Indrajit. Before I say anything, I must acknowledge this, that two ladies out in this room, the last 20 years or maybe 18 years, have done some remarkable work. Tripti and Sapna out there. Been seeing them forever, and steadily, every day they send out stuff. I don't know how you do it, but I must acknowledge the remarkable work you girls are doing. Well, Indrajit, I'll put it like this to you. A lot of the issues that Prem raised are genuine concerns. We need to, look at this social and equity angle of any city. In 1982, the Greater Mysore Chamber of Industry had a president called Lakshmanan. And in a meeting somewhat like this, we didn't have hotels like this at that time, he said exactly the same that you said today, that we need to decentralize, we need to have industry in Hubli and Shimoga and Mysore and such. But if I look at Mexico, for instance, or look at any other country, look at Indonesia and Jakarta, look at Bali itself, and so small in terms of the population if I were to look at Java. So this isn't something that is, shall we say, unique to India. Look at Bangalore. If you look at, the moment you said infrastructure, and I read it when Sapna sent this, first thing I told myself is, we are so hugely privileged in Bangalore. We have today about $3 billion that the corporation gets as revenue. We are the second highest GST payers in the country today, only after Mumbai. We have today about $350 billion, which is about 10% of our GDP, which is running at 3.7 to 4 trillion. And we are, if you take the last, say, 5 to 6 years, including, say, COVID and such, still finding that the CAGR of Bangalore's GDP is higher than any other of the 6 metros that we have. Now, and yet we have this challenge of, and people like Prem know this, you go walk into the BDA here, you will find, say, 5 town planners for a city this size. There is a chief minister, deputy chief minister, who has announced only 5-6 months ago that he's going to have 3 more satellite cities. Now, 3 satellite cities, and many of you know where they are, most of them on the north. What that means is the north of Bangalore has had, from 1967, Hoskote has been declared a drought-prone taluka, Kolar also. And you want to go and put this out there. You create an STRR, which is nothing to do with the Karnataka government. Gadkari did that. Now, that 287 kilometers immediately unleashes violently another set of things that will disastrously happen for this city. A city which has water today at an average of about 1,500 feet, right? And that's half a kilometer. Where are you going to get water if you want to do a satellite city in Devanhalli? As it stands today, we have got, and I'll finish with a couple of notes on this. As it stands today, we have got about 250 crore liters or 2.5 billion liters that we need, of which about 150 crore liters is groundwater. You know what that means? We are drawing only about 40% of water from the water supply board. Now, the amount of money that you need for the water supply board to see that they become a lot more efficient, to bring down that UFW or unaccounted for water to, let's say, half of what it is today at 40%, takes us only about 1,200 crores. This is a city which receives $3 billion or 24,000 crores every year as taxes that you and I pay. It is not for want of money. And I can tell you that NCR has a different challenge. It doesn't have the revenue. Bangalore has it, and still we are not doing it.
So coming to you now, what do you think is a holistic solution to, handle the urban migration? How do you readapt cities? See, we are unable to stop it. Like you said, it's the reality. Like I was in Buenos Aires, a city with having probably a higher population than Bangalore. It was a beautifully laid out city. We could see a lot of livable spaces, a lot of parks, a lot of entertainment zones. The traffic was nice. The roads were well laid out. You had parks, you had sporting activities spread across the city. It was extremely livable, it was extremely walkable, and it was a very enjoyable city to just move around. And financially, as I said, they are much weaker than us. And why are we not doing it? So what's that solution? Like supposing you get into the helm of affairs, what's the magic wand that you would want to use?
Wow, that's a very, very good but very loaded question. We can't prevent migration from rural areas to urban areas. It's just there are a lot of solutions for it, but I think that's going to be the natural trend of things to come. And it's happened before, it's happening right now, and it will happen. Now, if I had a magic wand, I would first try to reverse that migration by developing secondary and tertiary cities, make them as industrial hubs, or at least create centers of employment for them, so then they don't actually come into the cities. And I will say one thing about Tamil Nadu. We've had cities like Pollachi, Guduvancheri, Gummidipundi. They're not cities exactly, but they're towns. Vellore. Now, what's happening right now is that, I don't know what is going on, but there's a lot of political interest also in these towns. And so what they're doing is they're actually developing those towns. Now, again, if I come back to the magic wand question, I would look at these sources of creating jobs, decentralizing cities, taking care of transportation. Transportation is a big hassle today. Widening roads, again, a very tenacious proposition because nobody wants to give up land. But if you go at it with a very military-like effort, then probably it can be done. Also trying to bring in this issue of net zero. It's very, in our situation right now, net zero is still a very academic discussion. I'm talking about my 30-year practice. It's very difficult to convince clients to spend capital on trying to use renewable sources of energy. And I'm talking even about the government. So if you create all of these positive issues even at the primary education level, educate the electorate to elect officials only if they promote these issues. And for this, unlike America, we do have a very high literary population, and it's getting better and better, but still we have miles to go. Most of these developments should happen in rural India. We've given a lot of power to women, women's empowerment. That's, again, a topic of discussion, but not much has been done, if you ask me, at the ground level. But if you go in for very smart public policies, then I feel there is a great tendency to, create issues that will reverse this rural to urban migration and create these hotspots of development, not necessarily inside the city. I will take Chennai as an example. We have created an area called Old Mahabalipuram Road. Now that's called Greater Chennai. You will not believe how much of development is going on because we have all these IT spaces that have come in. Why? Because 15, 20 years ago, our political leaders took the effort of creating IT policies, and they gave these areas to become IT hubs. So these little villages actually have become very, very, centers of positive economic growth. Then we have the GST area that goes westward. Again, a source of great job creations, economic centers, and so on and so forth. So I think even right now, Sri Perumbudur, we're going to build an airport there. So Sri Perumbudur, which was a sleepy little village, is now a great center of economic growth. So I think I'm just talking about Chennai. So if you create these centers of economic growth, which doesn't need to flood in people into the inner cities, then perhaps Chennai is worked out well. Bangalore, for some reason, people maybe tend to like inner city Bangalore more than the outer cities. And I'm telling you, a lot has to do with political will. I wish to God I get elected to political office, and there's a lot one can do because being professionals like us, we know the ground realities. Political will, political will, political will is all I will say. And that is funded only by the will of the electorate, not to take handouts, but elect leaders who are centers of, who will create centers of positive economic growth.
My fundamental question to you now is, are our education policies relevant any longer? Like we have urban planners in the system. Do you think they are geared up, or is the education geared up enough to address these issues, or is it something that's been just happening over a period of time and they've been reading out of books which were written in the 60s and 70s and they're not adopting with the change and time that is coming in today?
We'll take example, Chennai as an example. Right now, in Oragadam area and Sri Perumbudur first became the industrial city. And then this Hiranandani Park came in Oragadam, and that area started developing. So, what's the question again?
I'm asking you, like, see, the challenge that our main topic is, it's about unlocking urban infrastructure. Now, urban infrastructure in India generally, if you see, is a gridlock. We do not have a world-class city at all. We have a city which actually is getting into a state of despair. If you actually look at it, there's none of the cities which are livable. There are no cities which are enjoyable. The old part of the cities which have retained their culture are still enjoyable probably. And you still like to go to Baswangudi, or you'd like to go to probably, T Nagar in Chennai or wherever it is, or you like to go to your Cuff Parades and Kolaba in Mumbai. But when you look at the rest of the cities which are coming in, they are characterless. They are devoid of character. And this is stemming out of a defective urban design policy, is what I believe in. So do you feel the education system itself in urban design is relevant? Is it adapted itself to today's times, or it's something which is in the past and we are having urban designers who are coming out of college who are absolutely no good to operate in today's times?
Yes, it's relevant to educate the system. Um, See, why we are doing why we are educating system and what is that infrastructure doing end of the day? The people should be happy and they should feel content. The cities which you said, the old cities, people are happy there because their soul is connected to those places. There are parks, there are birds, butterflies. So, human beings actually, the soul is actually connected to nature. And you should see the birds, you should touch the trees, you should see the butterflies. And when you go through all that, you become a real human. Then your soul is at the peace. So if we can do something like, in any city, where we can connect nature and human beings and educate the system, maybe we can make a system that all the governments and architects all together, developing the cities and working for one goal. End of the day, what matters? The people should be feel happy and content. According to me, it's like that. Then the productivity will increase, investments will be more. Then the country will grow, cities will grow. We can create cities inside cities. For an example, this Chennai I recently visited last week for a project, industrial project in Oragadam. So I saw that how Chennai is expanding into, the Oragadam area, and similarly 175 acre I have done industrial park in Sriperumbudur as well. So that time I was studying that entire area. Blackstone recently bought that entire project, and the same way in Bangalore also, like Hoskote, Atibelli is developing like anything right now. A peace is there. So that going to be a city inside the city.
See, my biggest challenge is this. I have forgotten the statistics, but the agrarian land available in India, the potable freshwater land available in India is very meager compared to the scale of the country, and it's compared to the scale of the population. We are expanding into new areas and we are calling it development. I don't feel it's development. The whole idea I feel is that we are eating away into our fertile land, and the biggest challenge that we are going to face in the future is about food and water. And the whole idea today is that when we want to reimagine cities and when we want to live with the reality of the city, is to try to build within the cities in a new paradigm of thinking where the cities get vertical without losing its cultural identity. So people criticize vertical cities most of the time, but sometimes with the kind of growth of population that we see, it becomes a reality. But how do we do it responsibly? Do we just ape the skyscrapers of the West, which are not relevant to today's climate in India, in our tropical place or subtropical climate that Bangalore is located in? So can't we reimagine an Indic city, which is a taller city, but which still retains the continuity of the beautiful lanes, the beautiful trees of Bangalore, a city within a garden rather than a city around a garden which is blocked by a compound wall? What do you think about that, being a hardcore Bangalorean? Yeah, we can add on to this, all of us.
The ideas are there, but what I'd like to emphasize is the institutional mechanism to implement those ideas. And we do not have effective urban local government in India. In that respect, in that dimension of democracy, we are a failed state. We didn't recognize it in the Constitution. There was an amendment in 1992 to recognize it, but that amendment has been ineffective. And we still have the old status quo where state government controls things for all kinds of reasons. Now, earlier you said the reality is this, the reality is that. It doesn't have to be. And it's not going to change through political will either. Politicians never change until the people demand they change. So let me give you an example. In Bengaluru, we have entered our 5th year without an elected municipal government, even though the Constitution says that period cannot exceed 6 months. We are functioning under a master plan that lapsed 9 years ago. If at the level of the central government, there was a government in power whose term had lapsed 4 years ago and whose policy frameworks had lapsed 9 years ago, there would have been a huge public uproar saying murder of democracy, collapse of governance, etc. to me, the fact that at the municipal level it is passing without notice, leave alone concern, is actually more worrying than the actual lapse of governance. So I think it's we, the people, who have to wake up to those kind of things. The other point I'd like to add is that it's not just at the urban level, the urban planning level, that we resolve this problem. There has to be a regional planning where you're looking at the scale of spatial scale, say, at a state level. And there is a theory in urban geography called central place theory, which was pioneered by this German called Kristalla in the 1930s. And he said settlements distribute in a hierarchy. You have a metropolis, you will have a set of tier 1 cities that depend on the metropolis, then each of these tier 1 cities support a set of tier 2 towns. And it goes on till even villages are in a hierarchy that way.
Absolutely.
So you need a regional planning effort that recognizes hierarchy and locates investment and intercity infrastructure to support this hierarchy. Interesting thing, there was a document in the state of Karnataka in 1976 that identified the planning framework for this, identifying by name each settlement and where it belonged in the hierarchy. But this has not been adopted. So we need to look at all these aspects also. It's not just at the urban planning level. And this, if you look at central place theory, it will deal to a large extent with the migration issue you are talking about, the distortion towards the metropolitan city.
Let me offer a brighter side to what Prem talked about. Ponni mentioned net zero somewhere. Today we have, Bangalore is the third largest when it comes to certified green buildings. And what does that mean? It means that each of those buildings, about 1.2 billion square feet, each of those buildings cuts about 15% to 18% on its energy. Sometimes it takes, there is one company, I can't take names here in Whitefield, which has 18 million units that it takes as off-grid and produces about 4 million units inside on its own local generation, whatever grid. Now, Karnataka is the only state in the country today which offers 100% generation. You have a building like this, you want to produce your own, if you have the, the rooftops for it, you can produce it and the government says, I will give you net metering. The other is that each of those certified buildings, I can tell you of this, about 20% of them, about 250 million, 300 million square feet of buildings, some of them on the ring road on the other side, if you're going from Hebal to, let's say, Krishnarajpuram, you will find that these buildings take no water at all from the outside. It's net zero water certified. There is no tanker water coming in, no borewell water used, no grid water also coming in. So you will ask me, how are they managing this? There are ways of doing this. There are at least 3 residential enclaves that I know of. One of them is a high-rise, by the way. 27 floors. I think it's 108 flats to each of those towers, 6 towers. In a place like Hope Farm, which is in the Whitefield area, where the groundwater level is at 1,500 to 1,700 feet. They're going net zero. No water from the tanker, system, no grid, and no water. They don't in any case get grid water. If you are developing, I know Indrajit is doing one of them, 100 acres, let's say, 4 million liters, if I were to take, let us say, just 1 meter of rainfall in Bangalore, we are getting more in the last 3 years, that's about 400 million liters. If you planned your development in a way that you are recognizing water-bearing capacity, worked it in a way that you do not have to have water from the outside, and you work most of it within the loop, you're on. South of Chennai, there is one Capita Land, there is one large campus there. They've got, I think, about 22 million square feet there in that space. All of it, about 80% of it is no water from the outside. In Sri Perumbudur, there is another large glass manufacturing company, 4 MLD at 4 million liters a day, right? And that's 1.2 billion liters in a year or more. No water from the outside. I was there last week. All of it, and it's done so well over the last, say, maybe about 8 years of consistent work. Who is doing it? Engineers. Engineers can also be destructive, I can tell you. So there are very good sides to what we are doing. And I can tell you that there is clear hope for a city like this one if we only worked more on the demand side. Let me end with one last sentence. The chairman of the Water Supply Board here has been around for the last about 1.5 years or 2. He was given a mandate when Yediyurappa was the chief minister. He was told that, look, I know that we have got about 42, 43%. I don't know what you do, bring it down to 20%. He's been starved of a little of funds, but he's managed to do some things to a point where he's got 8% on record, and I've checked this out. I mean, there are measuring systems that we have put in place, digitized, real-time dashboards, and we are finding that that 8% is about 80 billion liters in a year. 750 or 760 billion liters is our total annual water demand if I were to take this 2.5 billion liters that we have gotten in Bangalore. Energy is a different thing, but it's happening nicely enough, you know. What is the chairman saying? He says, look, I managed to get some money for this one, for the UFW part. He's, you know, I don't know if I can share this with you all. TG Halli, in 2011, we stopped taking water from TG Halli Reservoir, which is on the Arkavati. Arkavati, we are part of the, we are a sub-basin of the Kaveri in any case, Bangalore is. We have got Vrishabhavati, which is joining Arkavati anyway. There is Jaisim coming in. And, you know, we have got out of sewage water. If you see the entire Rajakalways that feed into the Arkavati, you will find that it's 160 million liters going out every day. No monsoon or no monsoon, we are getting 160 MLD. I'm saying, you know what happened in the last year and a half? It lands into this TG Haldi reservoir. There is a system that has been put into place where 110 MLD of water, which is RO processed just now, at no more than say 9 to 12 as TDS, but this water is mixed with the Kaveri water further down, you know, about 10, 11 kilometers away. All I'm saying is, quietly, Bangalore is doing a great deal of work. The government officer doesn't want to sit here and say it. Tripti Gehlot, for instance, a BBMP who's now the head of climate action, she reports to Umashankar, who's the UDD additional chief secretary. Quietly, they're doing some phenomenal work in the city. Trust me on that. I mean, I can go on with the good news in the city. We also know as good professionals, all of us, and those in the administration, that there are many more things that need to be done. We know that. And we have no comparison. I mean, if somebody tells me that Paris is this away, or some other city in Europe is this, you know, there is simply no comparison to what we have as challenges. About the only country that we can have some comparable sort of things is China. And China is doing a fabulous job, I can tell you, way, way beyond what India is doing. And India needs to learn from such systems.
See, we see a lot of initiative happening in the private sector. So probably now lead and associated certifying agencies got a lot of awareness of green buildings into the country. There's a lot of awareness of carbon neutral, which is coming in, or carbon zero buildings, which are coming in now. And we are having performance-oriented buildings which are developing. So there is a lot of activity which is happening in parts. You can see the private sector doing a lot of good things. We can see government doing a lot of good things in parts. But are we really there when we don't have a holistic approach? So the whole point is that while some things are improving, and it's based on the temperament of a certain officer, like we have seen, like we had Sri Kumar in police housing, who did a great job in bringing the awareness of green buildings or stuff like that. So it's dependent on a particular officer. But why are we not looking at a holistic situation? Don't we need to have a central command for our cities? And cities as a whole, like it's a bloody joke. Like when we go to Chennai, the fire driveway is 7.2 meters wide. In Bangalore, it's 6 to 8 meters. You go to Kerala, it's required only on one side of the road 4 meters. Does the tendency of fire change or the fire engines change? Means it's absolutely ridiculous that the bylaws have so much inconsistency across cities. So can't we get in a policy which is probably more pragmatic, more realist, more rooted in today's times? I think that's the biggest challenge that we are facing today. And whatever said and done, yes, Chennai is probably as of today better in terms of urban transport, but is it really doing the right thing? It's not. There is no city actually excepting Bombay to some extent which is doing the right thing as of now. And what do you think is, as architects, now we cannot talk in terms of like, the whole, there is obviously, the country needs to respond to a change, but there are bigger problems like food, shelter and all for most of the people. Most of the people are still below a certain economic strata and their challenges are higher, they won't join the system. But when we look at architecture, when we are looking at the subject of urban planning, our real estate developers, our architects, our urban designers, is Council of Architecture, II, doing a relevant job, or are we just attending meetings, seminars, talking in the air and getting out, showing some beautiful images? Don't you think that we need to have a solid statement from professionals to drive this change?
It's a very utopian proposal, but one that can be very practical. And it's going to be the need of the hour. If you don't address it now, then there will be a future generation that's actually going to blame us for not having put our foot out there and made a noise about it. In fact, made issues on it. Let me just address the question in parts. As architects, I feel we are game changers and influencers. Now, if you take our own projects, 95% of our projects are IGBC or LEED rated. And we work with a spread of government and private developers. And I feel that if you can influence your client to push forth these proposals in a constructive way, you can make some headway, not all the time, but some headway in a small slice of projects. Now, if you talk in terms of holistic, we advise state governments, by the way. We work with Telangana, we work with Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, sometimes up north also. I have been pushing this idea of standardization, like you say about setbacks, heights, all of that. You have development control rules that are only dedicated to those certain cities or those certain states. Now, all of that has to be standardized. The only body that can probably do it is Council of Architecture or the Indian Institute of Architects. And you're right, most of the time, and as architects, we are paying taxes, GST, income. Our taxation level is so much higher than doctors and lawyers and chartered accountants. So I think those bodies can make very, very fundamental impact to advising governments. And you rightly said there is a lacuna in education. Education at the primary level, at the high school level, at the higher education level. So when you talk about holistic macro level thinking, it covers all of these. Education, transportation, again I'm going to that, economics, because these are the driving factors of how the country is moving forward. So I think these bodies are very, very important in advising the government. And maybe as architects, we should be game changers and influencers, probably with our clients, possibly. But if we all rose up as a force, made a little noise, and then try to influence the office bearers of these bodies, because very often times there's elections and they get into these positions. Now, what are they actually doing for the country and for the greater good? So probably those are the driving factors, and those institutional bodies can bring in these corrections. Like I said, when we do government projects, it's very nice to know that chief ministers and ministers are actually asking us, what is the latest development in maybe developing water bodies, cities? What is the meaning of this IGBC? Because remember, they are all old school. The younger politicians are yet to come into power. And so are the IAS officers. We have very good, bright IAS officers who are actually driving these issues at the higher level. So maybe as architects, and there are architects in the IAS officers cadre also, just for you to know, engineers. So they're all making this very concerted level of advising governments and also having something called PPP, private-public partnership projects, where they are bringing in just not only national interests, but also international standards into these projects. So I'll tell you something. I lived in the US for 10 years. And I came back to India and I realized you can't compare the West and India, and neither can you compare it with China, because there's a huge issue called cultural context. India develops at a function of time. You cannot have overnight changes. It takes a little time, but we'll get there. And as a civilization, I think we've survived, I don't know how many millennia, and I have a lot of hope for this country. But like you said, it's professionals like us who need to push issues more stronger.
Since I think the last 20 years, I've been looking at newspapers and the television, and you see a lot of consultants to the for the urban development of Bangalore. Private sector consultants who are actually advisors, not consultants, who are actually IT guys, who are, stockbrokers or investors. We don't see a council of architecture, we don't see an IA, we don't see an urban designing association which is sitting on the platform and advising the government. So is it taken over by the people who drive the resources financially, or is does it have to have a proper professional training which is on the advisory panel who can advise the government on what is to be done in terms of urban planning? This question is for all of you.
Let me answer that first, because you see, we sit on government hearings very often times, and this is on a very practical level. Architects get sidelined a lot. Engineers grab the show. And being a woman, for me, when we designed the secretariat, I can't tell you how many times I had to put my foot down, bring the roof down for the government establishment and the PWD department to actually listen to our ideas. And very often times I was, branded as someone being too pushy about ideas. So I feel again, I'm going back to government, because they're the ones who are putting larger projects right now. If you notice, in the past 5-10 years, architects get sidelined by engineers, of all people. This is the truth of it. So if we as architects, and I'm just talking about my experience, your experience may be very different. We as a body, as an architect's body, have to make that concerted effect, and we have to hold office bearers of IIA and COA responsible. And that happens if we attend meetings more frequently. I mean, I know it's an impossible idea. Practically, it's not possible. But I'm telling you, as architects, we do get sidelined in government hearings. In government, even if it's your own project, you really have to fight for what you want. I mean, that's, again, my experience. I'm sure you all have more positive experiences.
Yeah, we have a lot of individual warriors amongst all of us. Individually, I think a lot of us are setting out to do what needs to be done in different ways. Like somebody's promoting sustainability, somebody in the urban space, design space, craftsmanship. There's a lot of stuff happening all around. But cohesively, do we have a voice? And don't you think that's the strongest message, all of you in the audience, don't you think that's the strongest message that we have to send across? That we are the cohesive voice, we demand change, we are the professionals. Mind your own business, do what you're doing best. Let us do what we are best at. Don't you think this is the message that will go across? Developer on the table, what do you feel?
Well, it isn't, it takes many hands to actually make action like that. I'll put it like this to you. It's not to do with one architect. There are domains which go beyond the architect. And I've said this for 40 years, that if we stick only to volume, aesthetics, and space, and not look at what plugs in and plugs out of buildings and into the city, we are not going to solve these challenges of infrastructure. We have to look at anything that you do with simple things like energy bearing and water bearing capacity as integral part of any master plan, city or something that you build as on the in-building scale itself. That is all I can say. Now, and I can tell you that, in response to what Ponni said, here, I can talk of, I've been interacting with many of these people in administration, and I can tell you that these guys are clear. They have a very clear plan in most cases. And when you walk into their rooms, they tell you, look, I will give you 5 minutes. Give me in 2 or 3 paragraphs as you speak as to what you want me to take as action. It's tough to be a bureaucrat. Yeah, and I know some of the good Sardar in your city is another old friend of mine. And he keeps saying that it is not possible for me to act on certain things because the way the administrative system is, sort of evolved over 50 years just makes it impossible for them to act. No IAS officer has any power to act. Keep thinking, and when we walk into their rooms, we have this illusion that this guy has the power to decide something or the other. He just can't, right? And clearly and very happily in Tamil Nadu, and here also I can tell you, administration and the political system is like 2 parallel lines. These guys will continue to do whatever has to be done. Ministers can come and go, and systems are reasonably stable.
They're stable, but I think disruptive enough to not keep us happy on the roads. And whatever is happening, absolutely, it's extremely slow. So I definitely would want to differ with you on that, on this particular point. And I personally feel that, there is a lot of effort which is happening from the private sector. You have done a lot of effort with the project that you did in terms of sustainability. And there is a lot of work happening in the government, but it's extremely slow. The pace is extremely slow. And at an individual level, yes, she, him, or any of us can do a little, we can walk the path a little, but it's only the organizations which can do it. The COA which goes and does inspection in colleges, high time they look at the syllabus first of all. The kind of education itself needs to change. And everybody's talking about a dilution of the architectural thought. That's what she just said compared to the engineering thought, or nowadays looking at social media that we heard about the interior design thought, because they have a voice on social media. Architects are not supposed to voice themselves in the public forum, which is ridiculous in today's world. How does a young guy who comes out, who has brilliant ideas, showcase his work to the market? Don't you think we have to change at all levels? Don't you think that CO document 1972 has to be scrapped and a new document be rebuilt on it? I think it's time for a lot of change. And I don't know how much time we have, but I feel that this is a discussion that we'll throw open to the audience to debate and ponder upon for a period of time.
I would like to add one thing.
Yeah.
See, we have to think from developer side also. We architects are proposing green buildings, all the ecosystem, whatever is suitable for sustainability and all that. And see, the cost of green building, it's actually it's more.
It's not. We disagree. A green building is always cheap. It saves material. It reuses material.
It depends.
Saves
Depends
water,
on
it renews energy.
Depends on different markets.
It's been promoted wrongly.
So the thing is, if we get more FAR or FSI from the government, and then if the government is promoting the developers to, do the more eco-friendly buildings, then it will be good.
See, what is FSI? FSI is something for a density of a building. Now, supposing you have FSI of 4 and you have 500 square feet apartments, what's the density of population versus you have 10,000 square feet flats with a FSI? For the density of population drops. So the first thing the government should understand, it's not about FSI for residential, it's about the density of population. And based on this density of population, the FSI for the commercial, for the institutional space or any other supporting space should be decided. So the first thing is we are wrong at the root level, and as developers, as architects, as engineers, as technocrats, I think we all have to join hands and we have to lead a change. Please do it. Let us fight for this. Let us have one peg of whiskey less in every meeting and try to work towards this. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Please, can we have a bigger round of applause for all of them, please? I love the way the session ended. Unfortunately, in the best interest of time, we can't really accommodate questions right now. But of course, there's a nice... We can take one question? Oh, wow, wonderful, nice. We can take one question. Can I have the mic passed on to him, please? Over there, quickly. The gentleman over there, please. Udhar. Can you please raise your hand for him? Yeah. You raised your hand, right? So just give it to him then. Yeah.
A while ago, I had an opportunity to work on large infrastructure projects in UK. And we were part of a team which was designing and building High Speed 2, which was an infrastructure project linking the north and south of England. And we never used viaducts until and unless it was necessary. But here in Bangalore, every corridor is a viaduct. When I asked designer back then, Grimshaw, they came back to me saying, it just looks ugly. That was a simple reasoning as to why they did not use viaducts. And yet here, every road has a metro viaduct on top of the road. How is it that we architects can be a part of larger projects which shape the country and which shape the cities and which shape how we travel as citizens?
Problem in India is we don't have an imagination of the city. We locate culture and tradition in the village and we look at the city as only a technical entity. So if you look at the way bylaws are framed, for example, there's a standard set by the National Building Code, and most municipalities across the country have followed it. It's just a mathematical formula that's derived from the size of the plot, the width of the road, and the zoning. The notion of making a specificity of neighborhood and recognizing topography and history in the city and all of that is just not there. We don't think of cities that way. Just think of them as this abstract technical entity. So I think that is, we need to build the notion of urbanism as a way of life and what that is. And I'm going to say something a bit controversial here. I don't have faith in the architectural community to do this. Because architects, by their training, get conditioned to deal with one client at a time and to construct spatial order in their projects. And cities are about multiplicities and spatial complexity. So a great deal of damage has been done by architects who think they can extrapolate their architectural skills to prescribing what cities should be. So I think we need to think, what is urbanism as a way of life? Why are cities a creative place? There's a very interesting book by a person called Jeb Brugman called Welcome to the Urban Revolution. And he says cities are creative places. They always produce a higher percentage of their GDP than the percentage of the population they constitute. And cities leverage, in cities you can, one is cities are anonymous, so therefore you're free. In the village, you're under the gaze of tradition and condition. And because of that, you can leverage economies of scale. There are more people you can connect with. Economies of density, they're in a closer region to connect with. Economies of association, where you leverage scale and density to form group. And economies of extension, where you can leverage this to connect with economies outside the city. And he suggests that what the city should try to do is facilitate this leveraging and iron out clashes between the multiplicities rather than subject the city to a one-size-fits-all approach like a master plan. To do this, you need to decentralize planning. And there's a thing called a principle of subsidiarity, which is the smallest level should do the maximum possible, and what it cannot do, it delegates upwards in the system, which is opposed to the top-down delegation we currently do. So we need to think about how we construct cities and spaces, how there's a legibility and clarity of urban form that leverages this vibrancy, the inherent vibrancy of the city, and get out of this abstract thing that the city is just a technical entity. So you have these planners who think there's nothing wrong with taking a historic core like MG Road over here and running this viaduct of a metro, right
Looks like a dental impairment, actually.
Sir, just
Columns
a follow-up
and
question for
very
that.
well.
It might be very controversial. Do you think letting go of the municipal town planners and probably having one body of just architects who are here or Lutyens is a solution?
Thank you so much for that question. Thank you so much to all of you. Please give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure there are many more questions in your mind, but we would love to take them offline. Thank you so much. I would love to request Shoaib Sheikh, AG himself from Negamche Group, to please kindly come on stage and hand over the token of appreciation to all of them. Please give it up for Mr. Shoaib as well, ladies and gentlemen, as he comes on stage and gives away the token of appreciation to all of them. So much of appreciation and clapping going on when the session was on, and now when we actually want it to happen, see, everybody is smart enough to get the hint. Thank you.